right, let me ask you a question. I want you to think about this honestly. Have you ever worried about something that it consumed your thoughts? You ever been in a place where you've been so worried about something that all you thought about was that one thing because you were so worried about it? I bet for many of you could think of a time that that's been true of you. Maybe it was a test that you were about to take. Anybody been there before? You've been so worried. No? Yeah? Okay. It's like, but say, you're not that different from me, are you? It's like either you're really smart or you don't care at all. But we could get that way about tests. Maybe you've been worried about asking somebody to prom or to homecoming, right? How am I supposed to do that, guys? Yeah, it worries you a little bit, right? What are they going to say? Okay. Or maybe it's been something a little bit more real, like a decision that you had to make that you're a little worried about, or maybe even you were worried about someone's health. And so you find yourself in these moments where you just worried and it consumes your thoughts. Worry can corrupt us on a lot of levels. Worry, at its core, is the root of anxiety. And we all know that anxiety is a word that we toss around and we use a lot, and we have a lot of high levels of anxiety right now with young people for a lot of different reasons. But if you were able to remove worry at the core of you, it would paralyze a lot of nearly all anxiety in your life. I want to tell you that sadly we don't do that. We haven't figured this out. We worry about stuff and we experience the consequences of worry in our life. I remember when I graduated, as I was graduating college, I was in my last semester, I was starting to look for jobs, and it was like a high level of worry and anxiety in my life at that time. A couple reasons. One, I was graduating, so I wanted to find a job so that I didn't have to live with my parents anymore, okay? I didn't want to be one of those guys that lived in their parents' basement and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, I need to get a job, all right, so I can make some money and get my own place. But I also was engaged to Shelby, right? And so I was like, I want to figure that out before we get married, get a job and all this kind of stuff. And on top of all of that, I was going into ministry. So I was literally prepared to move anywhere in the United States that God was going to lead me. In fact, in my last semester, I was an inch away from moving out to Arizona and accepting a job out there and going out there. And so I had all of these things going on. And I'm seeing my friends get jobs and different things. And so my thoughts were just consumed with worry. Well, what happens if I don't? Or what happens if I don't get to the right place? Or whatever it is. And it consumed me. And the responsibility with that and the worry that came along with that was very hurtful for myself in those moments. The question that I found myself asking in that moment, which in that moment I didn't have the answer for, okay? Now, all these years later, I feel like I've got a little bit closer of a strangle on what this looks like, but back then I didn't. The question I would ask myself, and the question I bet you have maybe asked yourself is this: how do I not worry? Now, that seems like a silly question. Like, even if you don't want to worry, but you do find yourself worrying, how do you not? How do you not worry when you don't want to worry, but you find yourself worrying? Does that all make sense? So what do? It's a complicated thought process because it's not just a desire, it's a mindset, or it's like a belief system, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But I wonder if you've ever thought this question: how do I not worry? If we're able to figure this out, we're going to be able to live lives that look a lot more like what Jesus has designed for your life. He has not designed you to live a life of anxiety or worry or fear, or any of those things. He wants you to have peace and comfort, but you can't do that when you live a life of worry. Now, in Jesus' time, people would find themselves worrying about different things than we worry about. You may worry about some of the common things that you worry about: grades, relationships, all those type of things, a ball game, stuff like that. But in Jesus' time, the things that they were worried about were a lot different. They would worry about basic human needs. In fact, in the first century, a common Jewish person didn't have a whole lot more than what was right in front of them. They'd have like 2 or 3 sets of clothes, food for a couple days, and probably some type of home or shack or shelter that their whole family, extended family, would all share together. And so their worries weren't about, I wonder if so-and-so likes me, or what grade I'm going to get in the Jewish Talmud, or whatever it is. They were worried about basic human needs, and if they didn't work for it, if they didn't go about their business and do what they needed to do, then maybe they wouldn't have enough things to survive or to take care of their family. Different types of worry, right? But this is what we find, and they would often find themselves worrying about these things, whether they would survive, and what they need to do to accomplish these things. Now, as we've gone into this series, Coin, we've learned about a couple different things in Matthew chapter 6 that Jesus is pointing out. Most importantly, here's a couple things that we learned last 2 weeks. Wealth is not determined by what you have, it's what you give, right? We looked at that. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Last week, Jake talked to us about this. Our loyalty cannot be divided between God and money, right? Jesus says you cannot serve both God and money. And so Jake broke that down and looked at us about our loyalty and who are we most loyal to with our time and our resources, all those type of things. Well, as we continue through Matthew chapter 6, he goes a little bit deeper into this idea of stuff, because this is what Jesus is talking about. He's talking about money and resources and things that you have and how to deal with them. He goes a little bit deeper and he starts talking about where we place our trusts. And do we have worry about these type of things? So what I'm going to read to you is 9 verses, okay? And so it's a little, it's going to take a minute, all right? But it's from Matthew chapter 6, starting in verse 25. You can follow along on your phone in the Bible app, and it's also going to be on the screen, okay? But here it is, Matthew chapter 6, as we're going to finish up this set of verses from the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus says this, "Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow? They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you that not even Solomon, all of his splendor, was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what should we eat, or what should we drink, or what should we wear? For the pagans run after all of these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all of these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." Okay, so that's our text for tonight, where we're going to break this down. So Jesus talks about worry, he talks about God, and he talks about the kingdom. What does all of this have to do with you as a high school student? I'm sure that's what you're thinking right now. So let me help you see it like this. Jesus, when he talks about worry and he talks about clothes and food, I think that could be kind of hard for some of us to relate to. If I were to guess, I'm making an assumption here, is all of you probably don't worry about what you're going to eat next. You may wonder what you're going to eat next, but you don't worry about what you're going to eat. You don't worry if you have clothes. You don't worry about those things because you already have them, okay? It wasn't true in Jesus' time, right? Some people did actually worry about these things. But do you know how you get these things, clothes and food? Do you know where they come from, where they start? With money, right? That's where these things come from. And so I've had enough conversations with students over the years and seen this firsthand to know how worry and money and priority of these things work in a student's life. So let me give you an example, okay? I'm going to give you a hypothetical situation of a student named Jim, all right? I chose Jim because kids aren't named Jim anymore, okay? So this isn't about anybody, all right? So let's say Jim is one of those guys that is always at youth group. He's always at small group. He's always at church. You can always see him there. He's super involved. Great kid, right? Well, Jim, he turns 16, and you know what happens when you turn 16? Thank you, Heath. That's right. You get the driver's license, okay? So Jim gets his driver's license, and then he gets a car. And he realizes that now that I got a car, to make it move, I need gas, and to get gas, I need what? What? I need money, Heath. That's right. You're going to be my little helper here, okay? All right. So he needs money. So what's he get, Heath? What's he got to do? Get a job. He goes and gets a job, right? And so, did you look at my notes? All right. So he gets a job, and he starts working. And at first, he likes the paycheck because he gets some money, and it's nice. But what he uses money for, he goes out and he buys gas. Maybe his parents make him pay for insurance, not really sure. And he spends some money on himself, all this type of stuff, where he starts collecting stuff. Well, he realizes that he can make some money, and so he starts working more and more and more, and all of a sudden, he's got himself some money. But next, in the progression of things, now he's got get his car, he's got a job. What's he get next, Heath? No, he's a high school student. What's he get? What comes next? Who's going to ride in that car with him? He's gonna get a girl that's a friend, all right? He's getting a girlfriend. Jim's got a girlfriend, right? And he realizes now he's got a girlfriend that he's gonna have to pay for some stuff, right? He's got Valentine's Day and Christmas and birthdays, and he's got to take her on dates and stuff like that. He doesn't have to pay the bills yet. We're still talking about a high school student, okay? But he realizes all of these things. He's got to start working a little bit more to pay for these things because, again, that paycheck supports all of these things that he needs. And so Jim realizes, I got this, Heath. He realizes that going to school and working a job and keeping up with homework and then whatever other activities that he's involved in, and now he's got this girlfriend that wants to, text him and talk to him all the time and hang out with him and stuff like that. It's a lot of time. Guess what gets cut out? Church. Right? He's got to start working on Sundays because he's got to pick up those extra shifts. He's got to make the money. He likes the money. The money helps support having the car and the gas and the girlfriend and all this type of stuff. And so he stops coming to group on Wednesday or stops coming to church on Sunday. And you may say, okay, I kind of saw this coming. Hypothetical situation, right?
Get rid of the girlfriend.
Well, that's, calm down, dude. Hypothetical. Okay? Seen it 100 times. Jim's story is a sad story because I've seen it in my life. I've seen countless kids go through this progression. The keys, the car, the job, the girl. Something gets cut. What's get cut? The spiritual. And the sad thing is, it doesn't have to be that way. That's not how it has to be. Don't let that be your story. And so with that hypothetical situation, as we talk about worry, as we talk about money, I want to show you how to avoid that. Some of you, if you're here, I'm guessing you have the opportunity to avoid that. But I also can make an assumption that for some of the empty seats in here, people who's that story, who've cut God out of their life for one reason or another. Maybe it wasn't because of a job, but maybe, and you wonder, how does that happen? So I want to show you things in regards to as you go through being a teenager in high school and as you get jobs and cars and girlfriends, boyfriends, all that kind of stuff, how do you keep yourself grounded? How do you not worry about the resources and the money to keep yourself focused on the important things? So let me show you, and they're going to be really simple. In fact, you're not going to walk out of here thinking this is anything crazy, but here's the first thing I want you to see, and it comes from our text. Number one is don't worry about money, all right? Don't worry about money. You don't have to be a Bible scholar to read the text that we read tonight and see what Jesus is trying to say is you don't need to worry about this. This does not need to be something that causes you anxiety, that causes worry in your life. It's so simple, but let me tell you why. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help you in any way. Worrying about money doesn't help your life in any way. Look again what he says in verse 27. He says, can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And when you worry, you don't benefit yourself in any way, especially when you worry about things that are out of your control. Let me tell you, as a high school student, there is actually very, very little need for you to have to worry about money in your life. You've got the rest of your life to make that be a problem of yours and something that you think about and worry about. As a high school student, I don't care if you feel like you got to pay for your insurance and your car and all this kind of stuff. You feel like it. There's actually really little room that you need to worry about money in your life. It's just really not that important for you. And when I say worry, I'm talking about elevating this need for money in your life or for the paycheck or whatever it is, right? Because I don't make an assumption that some of you in here think, I'm consumed. I got to make more money. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying, if we go back to that story, is that sometimes you get to a place going, well, what's more important? I really do need money, and I guess I can go to church anytime, or I guess it. And so something gets cut out. How do you make that not a part of your story? Worry blurs your focus. When you worry, you're typically worried about yourself. And guess what? Jesus very rarely talked to us or asked us to be self-focused. He wanted us to be externally focused. And so when you worry about these things, worry about the paycheck or saving for yourself, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. None of these things are bad things. It's where they fall in line of the priority in your life. It shouldn't be your focus. It shouldn't dominate your attention or your mind, okay? The thing about these verses about worry, or maybe what Jesus wants you to combat those thoughts with, is remembering this. God's going to take care of you, right? Talks about the grass of the field, talks about the flowers, it talks about the birds of the air, all that type of stuff, right? And what he's trying to communicate and say is that the reason that you don't have to worry is that you recognize that God is going to take care of you. If he takes care of the birds, if he takes care of the flowers, how much more you who are made in his image will he make sure that you have what you need? Now, there's an important question that comes along with that, okay? And you may be thinking it right now, and you're going to talk about that in your small groups. But for now, I want you to recognize this truth that comes from the text, that God has shown us and told us, Jesus has told us that he will take care of what you need. You have to believe that you don't have to worry about money. It doesn't help you in any way, and that God has got you. Do you need money? Do you need money?
No.
Yes. You do. You do need money in this world, okay? You don't have to be that smart to figure out you need money to survive, right? But the belief that God will provide what you need, when you begin to sacrifice the important things in your life because of money, then you're misplacing your trust. Do you hear what I said? When you begin to sacrifice the important, the spiritual, because of money, you're misplacing your trust, because we want our trust to fall with God. So let me tell you what to do, because not worrying you don't really walk out of here knowing, well, how do I do that? I'm supposed to not worry. Okay, how do you not worry? So here's what I want you to do. My second point, the only other thing I want to communicate to you is this, is to set your thoughts on advancing his kingdom. Set your thoughts on advancing his kingdom. And here's what I mean by that. You can't be you-focused, okay? This whole world that we live in, and I live in it too, this whole world that we live in is very you-focused. Every ad, everything that you see on social media, I don't know if you know this, there's algorithms, it's all targeted at you to get you to buy something, consume something, be something, or think something, okay? When we think about advancing the kingdom, you cannot be you-focused with your money or your stuff. Jesus said this. He said, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Seek first his kingdom, not yours, his kingdom. That's how you figure out how not to worry. Worry mostly has to do with you. You're worried about yourself. When someone seeks his kingdom, God's kingdom, you're not worried about yourself. You're worried about kingdom things. You're looking at something bigger. And all the while, you're remembering that he will still take care of you. That's his promise to you, right? You have to focus on what you're going to eat or what you're going to wear, or what you're going to drink, or any of those things. That's about you, okay? When you focus on the kingdom, you recognize that he's going to take care of you. And Jesus said this, all these things will be added to you as well. It's another promise that he's got you. What you need will be available. And Jesus also said this, doesn't life consist of more than food and clothes? And so we got to change what we worry about. We got to focus on eternal things. That's what we'll focus on. We'll set our thoughts on advancing the kingdom. This is why we talk about kingdom work. This is why we challenge you to do those things. Why we talk about service. This is why we give you those opportunities to go to Fairfax, to serve like you guys did last week on Wednesday night, to focus on different things outside of yourself. Ultimately, recognizing it doesn't rely on you. It relies on God. So here's what I'm telling you with all this, is that you can trust God with every part of your life. Okay? If you can remember this, you can trust God with every part of your life, and that includes your money. A couple weeks ago, I talked to you about what it looks like to be rich, okay? I told you how much money you had to have, how much you may not sit in here thinking that you're rich, but in comparison to the rest of the world, you have a whole lot more than other kids your age across the globe. You can trust God with what you have. The world will tell you it's your responsibility to make money, to to save money. I'm not asking you to avoid those things or not to do those things. I'm not asking you to be responsible. I'm asking you to have a proper perspective of money. A proper perspective. It's nice to have some money, but it shouldn't dictate your life. It shouldn't dictate your thoughts, what you worry about, what consumes you. When you put your trust in Jesus, money doesn't have to be the source of worry in your life. It doesn't matter if you're poor or you're rich. You know that Jesus is the anchor in your life, your relationship with him, okay? Here's why. I got a few minutes left. Let me tell you why. Here's why I believe this is true. How can you trust God with every part of your life, including your money? Because let's be honest, a lot of people don't understand how this works. How can I trust God with my money? It's my money, right? I'm the one who makes it. I'm the one who spends it. God has a proven track record of being faithful. And I say he's faithful with the little things. In fact, we learn in Scripture, be faithful with the little things and you'll be entrusted with more, right? God has been faithful with the little things. If he's faithful with the birds and the flowers, will he not also be faithful with you? Has he been faithful all throughout Scripture? Of everyone who put their trust in them, who put their hope in him, is he faithful with you for your biggest need that you have in your life of sin that separates you from God? Listen to me for 1 second. The sin that you have in your life that separates you from God, is God not faithful? Answer me. Come on, Heath. Is God faithful?
Yes.
How so?
Because he's with us.
Yeah, what did he give? Himself, Jesus. Your biggest need in your life, the sin that separates you from God, God has been faithful and sacrificed himself on your behalf. And so you can trust him with every part of your life, even the little dollar bills that you make at your part-time job right now as a high school student. He cares for you. He loves you. You don't have to worry about these things. When you do this, you can become someone who shapes culture in your friend group, or maybe even in your small group, maybe even in your home. And you begin to change the world because your worry goes from yourself to kingdom matters. And so here's what I want you to see with all of this. You have a focus that is beyond the here and now, and you have to put your trust in the faithfulness that God has already shown to you. This whole series is not about what you do with your money or your resources or your paycheck. It's how you view those things in your life. And if there's one thing I would leave you with, this is this. You can trust God with every part of your life, including your money, and how you handle with those things, what you do with them, how you think about them, reveals something in your heart. You could trust him because he's faithful.